Hello, everyone. I am a 26-year-old woman, and I have always been the type of person who steps up for family, even when it costs me time, energy, and money I did not really have. My mom, Janet, is 49, and my stepdad, Mark, is 52. Mark has 3 kids from his first marriage: Ethan, who is 25, Natalie, who is 22, and Maddie, who is 16. I do not have any siblings of my own. My parents divorced when I was 9, and my mom met Mark when I was 14. Mark has always made it very clear that I was not his child. I was simply Janet's kid. He was never openly cruel, but he never treated me like part of his family either. When my mom married him, I was immediately placed in the role of helper, whether I liked it or not. I was the built-in babysitter, the person who helped with homework, the one who kept Maddie entertained when she was little, and the emotional support person for his older 2 kids whenever there was drama in their lives. No one asked me if I wanted that role, but I took it on because that is what my mom needed, and I wanted her to be happy. While Ethan got a brand new Ford truck for his 17th birthday and Natalie was given a fully paid apartment during college, I worked part-time jobs all through high school and college. I helped pay bills at home because Mom and Mark claimed they had too many expenses, and I remember evenings when I had to skip hanging out with friends because I was either working or watching Maddie for free. I never complained out loud, but deep down I always noticed the difference in how I was treated. Mark's children were given opportunities and luxuries that I had to fight for on my own. I learned to budget early and became the kind of person who saved every penny, while his children lived like they had a safety net I never did. Fast forward to now, I am in a good place financially because I built a career in finance, worked hard, and have been very disciplined about saving. I live alone in a modest but comfortable apartment in Chicago, and I am careful with my money because of how I grew up. My mom recently suggested that we should all have a family night out because I had not seen them much over the summer. She picked a trendy upscale bar and steakhouse in downtown Chicago. I assumed it would be a small group, just her, Mark, and maybe Maddie. I had no idea what I was walking into. When I arrived at the restaurant, my stomach dropped. Mark had brought his entire side of the family. Ethan was there with his fiancée, Natalie was there with her boyfriend, Maddie had her best friend with her, and Mark's sister and her husband even showed up. There were 11 people at this table, and I instantly felt like I had been blindsided. Everyone was in high spirits, laughing loudly, and already ordering cocktails when I walked in. I smiled politely and sat down, but I could feel myself tense up as I glanced at the menu. The prices were staggering, and I knew this was not going to be a cheap evening. I decided to play it safe. I ordered one entree, a chicken dish that cost $28 and a single drink. I figured I would enjoy spending time with my mom, keep things light, and not spend much. But as the evening went on, I watched in disbelief as the bill climbed higher and higher with every order. Mark was ordering top-shelf bourbon like it was water. Natalie and her boyfriend got 2 bottles of Dom Pérignon champagne without even glancing at the price. Ethan ordered a seafood platter for the table, followed by a massive wagyu steak. Maddie ordered a $60 dessert platter for the table, and Ethan decided he needed another round of drinks, which no one declined. No one said a word about prices. It was clear that they saw this as a celebration, and they were spending freely. I sat there quietly, picking at my food, sipping my drink, and feeling more uncomfortable with every passing minute. I am not cheap, but I do not like being trapped in a situation where I am expected to pay for things I did not order or enjoy. I had come to see my mom, not to bankroll a feast for Mark's family. When the check finally arrived, I nearly choked. The total came to $2,478 before tip. Mark picked it up, glanced at it, and then casually said, "We will just split it evenly." Comes to about $225 each. My stomach twisted into knots. I had eaten one entree and had one drink. That was it. I did not feel it was right to pay that much for food I did not even touch. I said firmly, "I am only paying for what I ordered," and I put down my card for $50 plus tip. The table went silent. Everyone stared at me like I had just insulted them. Mark looked annoyed and said, "That is not how family works." We all split the bill because we are here together. I stayed calm and said, Family does not mean paying $225 for food I did not eat. I am covering what I ordered. My mom looked uncomfortable and stayed quiet, which made me feel even more isolated. Natalie rolled her eyes and said, "It is embarrassing to nickel and dime at dinner. We are all adults here." I snapped back, "Exactly. You are all adults who ordered champagne and lobster. You can pay for it." Ethan muttered something under his breath about me, always acting better than them. I had no interest in escalating the argument, so I paid my part, said goodbye, and left shortly afterward. Later that night, my mom texted me and said I should have just paid to keep the peace and that I had made Mark feel disrespected. That comment made my blood boil. I reminded her of all the times I stepped up for her and Mark's family. I reminded her of how I babysat his kids for years without pay, covered bills when she and Mark struggled, and worked myself to exhaustion while his kids got cars and apartments handed to them. I told her I was not going to feel guilty for setting a boundary, especially when no one ever offered me the kind of help that Mark so freely gives his own children. She never replied to that message. 3 days later, I got screenshots from friends showing me Ethan's vague Facebook post about selfish family members and Natalie's comment about some people needing a reality check. I do not even use Facebook much, but apparently this turned into a whole family drama. I texted my mom to ask if she had seen it, and she told me that I was making things worse by bringing it up. At this point, I feel completely alienated from my own family. I wanted to see my mom, not get dragged into this mess, and now I feel like I am the villain for refusing to pay for a meal I did not eat. Honestly, I feel like I'm being punished for setting a boundary. A week after Mark's call, I was still stewing. It wasn't even just the content of what he said, it was the sheer entitlement dripping from every word. For days, I replayed the conversation in my head, thinking about how he tried to twist my hard work into something they had supposedly enabled. The irony burned because when I look back at my life, I remember nights eating ramen and hustling shifts at 2 different jobs, not family members swooping in to make it easier. The part that lingered the most was the dismissal. When I reminded him of concrete ways I had shown up for them, like covering the mortgage when he was out of work or giving up my weekends to watch Maddie, he brushed it off with that condescending line, "That's what family does." It wasn't the words themselves, it was the hypocrisy behind them. Family does things for each other, sure, but in his world that meant me endlessly showing up for them while his family contributions were framed as above and beyond, acts of martyrdom. After the call, I couldn't focus on much. I kept oscillating between anger and exhaustion. Anger, because how dare he rewrite history like that, and exhaustion, because I realized how long I had been carrying this pattern with all of them. I had thought that when Melissa left and Dad reclaimed the house, maybe things would finally start settling into something resembling balance. But the call from Mark reminded me that my role in this family had always been defined as the responsible one, the person to absorb everyone else's chaos and somehow keep moving forward. Later that day, I called Mom. I needed to hear her side, not because I thought it would magically justify Mark's behavior, but because I was tired of feeling like the villain in this ongoing family saga. Mom sounded weary, like she'd been caught in the middle for too long. She told me Mark was embarrassed because none of his kids could afford to cover their share of the expenses that had come up. I already knew what she meant. There's always an expense, always some emergency that requires everyone to pitch in. This time, it had fallen flat because his kids didn't have the means, and instead of dealing with that reality, he turned his frustration on me. Mom explained that Mark had ended up covering the whole bill himself, and he was angry because he thought I'd step up. She didn't say it like an accusation, more like a resigned explanation, as if she was trying to soften the edges of his resentment. But all I heard was confirmation of what I'd suspected for years. Their expectation wasn't rooted in fairness or logic. It wasn't about equal burden. It was about me being the fallback plan. The worst part was hearing the guilt woven into her voice. She admitted she understood why I was frustrated, but it was clear she was still tethered to Mark's narrative. That family shares the burden line had sunk deep into her too, except what it really meant was that some of us gave until we were hollow, while others coasted by on excuses and unspoken hierarchies. I sat with her words for a long moment before I finally told her what I'd been holding in. I told her I'm done footing the emotional and financial load for his family. 2 weeks later, when I was just starting to breathe a little easier after the chaos of Frank losing his job, I got a message from Natalie. She had always been civil with me but distant, never quite warm. She told me that her boyfriend had just been laid off and that rent was coming due. She wrote, "You're doing so well. I figured you'd understand. Like my entire financial life was this endless fountain she could just dip into." I sat there staring at the message, feeling that old weight settle in my chest, because for years I had been the one covering gaps no one else wanted to deal with: groceries when mom's account overdraft, furnace repairs when it died in the middle of January. The constant nickels and dimes Frank made me feel guilty about chipping in. But I had drawn a line. So I replied politely that I wasn't in a position to cover anyone else's rent. That's when her tone flipped. She shot back that if I couldn't help, then I was proving I wasn't really family, that I only cared about myself. Reading those words made my stomach twist, but at the same time it was like a confirmation of every uneasiness I'd carried. I had always been useful to them when I was paying, when I was patching their holes, but the moment I said no, suddenly I was disposable. A couple of days later, the whisper started circulating back to me. Mark had apparently taken it upon himself to tell everyone that I refused to help his daughter and that I was cutting ties. The narrative became that I was cold, ungrateful, that I had turned my back on the family after everything they'd done for me. The irony was suffocating, considering how many years I had worked myself ragged just to keep my own roof over my head, while also making sure my mom had hers. It didn't matter to them that my bar had only recently started turning a steady profit, or that I'd been the one to keep us afloat when things were shaky. To them, the moment I said no, I had broken some unspoken contract. Then Mom called me crying. She hated the tension. She said it was tearing her apart. She didn't even ask me to fix it this time, just wept into the phone about wishing everyone could just get along. I listened, and I hurt for her because I knew she was stuck between loyalty to me and the life she had built with Frank. But I told her I couldn't keep doing this. I couldn't keep being the backup parent, the emergency fund, the one who was always expected to swallow her pride and pay up for the sake of peace. Something inside me had cracked during that police call at the bar, and it wasn't going to reset just because people were uncomfortable with my boundaries. So I went low contact. I still text Mom every few days, sometimes call her just to check in, but I've made no effort to see Frank or his kids since the disastrous dinner. It's been strange, quieter, lonelier in some ways, but also freer. I don't have to brace myself for what new financial favor is going to be asked. I don't have to calculate whether I can afford to say no without being painted as the villain. I've had more energy to focus on the bar, on the community that actually values me, and on friendships that don't come with price tags attached. Word must have gotten around the extended family, because a few of my cousins reached out to say they were proud of me for finally standing up for myself. It's been 3 months since everything blew up, and I can honestly say my life feels different in a way I never thought possible. Last weekend, Mom came to visit me, alone for the first time in years. Walking into my bar and seeing her without Mark hovering beside her was surreal. She looked lighter, almost like she could breathe again. Over a glass of iced tea, she admitted something that stunned me. She feels trapped because Mark's kids still lean on him financially, and he resents me for not doing the same. She confessed she had quietly been saving money in her own account because she's thinking about separating from him. Hearing her say that left me speechless. For so long I thought she and Mark were solid, unshakable, but apparently she's tired of being financially drained too. She told me watching me stand my ground had given her courage. I didn't know what to do with that at first. It's strange to realize that my refusal to cover a $600 bar tab and a series of no's to constant handouts became something bigger than just self-preservation. It was like she finally saw that she didn't have to accept being taken advantage of either. On my side, I've been in therapy. I started going a couple of months ago after one of my regulars at the bar recommended her counselor, and it's been eye-opening. I've been unpacking years of guilt I didn't even realize I carried, all those moments I thought I was selfish for not giving more, all the times I felt like I had to apologize for drawing lines. My therapist told me that boundaries aren't walls, they're doors I get to decide when to open or close. That shift in thinking hit me harder than I expected. I've been practicing small things, like saying no without over explaining, not cushioning every refusal with three excuses and a half promise to make it up later. The funny thing is, since that disastrous dinner, the ripple effects have reached everyone. Mark hasn't spoken a word to me. He acts like I don't exist, and honestly, that's fine. For the first time in my life, I don't feel tethered to his moods, his expectations, or his endless sense of entitlement. I used to worry that being cut out would feel devastating, but instead, I feel lighter, freer. It's like losing a weight I didn't realize I had been carrying for over a decade. Mom, on the other hand, has been visiting more often. We cook together in my small kitchen, we watch silly movies, and we've even gone out shopping like we used to when I was a teenager. Our relationship feels healthier now than it ever did when Frank was in the picture. Without his interference, we talk about real things, her plans, my goals, the future. She isn't asking me for money anymore, and I'm not constantly calculating what I can and can't cover. We're just two adults, mother and daughter, building a relationship that isn't rooted in crisis. And for me, the bar is thriving. March Madness nearly broke me, but it also put us on the map. We've become the go-to trivia spot in the neighborhood, the regulars are loyal, and I even had to hire 2 more part-timers to keep up with weekend crowds. For once, I'm not terrified of bills stacking up. Instead, I'm reinvesting in the business, fixing the last of the old stools, updating the lighting, and finally getting the jukebox repaired. The same machine that had been a running joke during my lowest points now belts out songs while customers laugh and sing along. It feels symbolic, like a full-circle moment. For the first time in my adult life, I'm not the family's emergency fund. I'm not the default backup parent. I'm not the scapegoat. I broke a cycle, and as hard as it's been, I wouldn't trade the peace I've found for anything. Watching my mom slowly gather her strength while I build mine has been one of the most unexpectedly healing things I've ever experienced. Thanks for sticking through this journey with me. If you've been following along, I appreciate you. Please don't forget to like this story and subscribe to the YouTube channel for more. Your support keeps me going.